Hey guys, I got a knife review coming to you, and as you can see, this is going to be on an Emerson, more specifically an Emerson CQC 7 tactical folder. Now, I don't claim to be a knife expert. I don't know everything there is to know about knives. You know, there's guys on YouTube that know a lot more about knives and have very high quality knife review videos, but I am a big fan of knives. And I carry a knife every day as my EDC, or everyday carry, for self-defense and general utility. So whenever I get a chance to talk about a knife of this high quality, I jump on it. This knife actually belongs to a friend of mine named Mike, and I'd like to say thanks to Mike for donating this knife for a week or so I could get an idea of the feel of this knife and talk about this knife and get to know this knife. It's a brand new knife. He barely had it for a couple days, and I actually have had it now for over a week. So thanks a lot, Mike, for having the guts to let me hold this thing. I promise not to damage it, scratch it, or whatever, because this is an expensive, high quality knife, and I'd feel horrible if I let something bad happen to this thing. Alright, so let's talk about this knife. So this is an Emerson made knife, and it is a very high quality knife made in America with high quality materials. And when you combine all those things, you're going to have to pay a pretty penny. The price for the CQC 7 in this configuration is about 150 bucks, give or take. You could probably find it a little less if you shop around online, but it's in the ballpark of $150. As a matter of fact, if you look at the box, it says right there $193.95, and that's just the suggested retail price. Like I said, you can get it cheaper online if you shop around. Now, I know what some of you guys are probably thinking. There's no way in hell I'd spend $150 on a knife. And you know, I don't blame you. That is a lot of money. But you got to understand, there are a certain group of people out there that may need a knife to save their life, or to save someone else's life. And when your life is on the line, or your loved one or your friend's life is on the line, you don't want that knife to break. And that's what you get when you buy a $150 high quality knife like an Emerson. You get a knife that's been tested under hard use conditions to withstand a lot of abuse. The blade's not going to break. I mean, anything can break and anything can fail, but in general, a high quality knife like this is going to hold up to a certain amount of abuse that a cheap $20 Big 5 knife is just not going to hold up to. So it's all relative. What is your life worth? You know, $150 isn't that much money in the grand scheme of things when it comes to one high quality knife that you're going to have for the rest of your life, that you can hand down to your kids even. Something to think about. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the features of the Emerson CQC 7 so you can better understand why someone would want to pay $150 for a tactical folder. The overall length of this knife is 8 inches when it's opened. The blade length is 3.3 inches. The blade steel is 154 cm stainless steel. The blade style is a Tanto style with a chisel grind. And if you don't already know, the Tanto style has its roots in Japan with Japanese swords. So it has incredible piercing power and piercing strength. You can penetrate a lot of leather, meat, tissue, other metals with this type of style of blade. Now, a big upside to a chisel design is that it's very strong, and you're less likely to have your tip break because it's just thicker. There's a lot more steel there, so you can be pretty aggressive with this tip and not worry about it breaking. You can chisel away at wood or whatever and not worry about that tip snapping off. The downside to a chisel design is that the blade itself is not symmetrical. The bevel's only on one side and the other side's completely flat. So what that means is if you had to do a precision cut, you may have a hard time making that cut in a straight line, depending on the person anyways. Just something to be aware of. It's not completely symmetrical. Now, I have heard in other reviews that the chisel grind is very much preferred for survival, because it's only sharpened on one side. So in a pinch you can take a file and put a field expedient edge on this thing and still cut enough to get the job done, or slice or fight to get the job done. So you could rub this on a rock theoretically, or take a metal file and just grind it down on one side, and it should get you by just enough to survive. Now, I don't know how true that is, but if that's what they say, you know, the logic makes sense to me. This particular model has a combination edge, meaning that it has a partial plain edge, straight edge on the front portion, and then the rear portion is serrated for cutting through material like ropes and whatnot. Now, some people say they like that, and some people say they don't. As far as utility goes, it's probably nice to have the serrated part when you do cut through ropes or whatnot. So that's just a preference thing. The blade thickness is 0.125 inches, as you can see there. The blade hardness is 57 to 59 Rockwell. The blade lock itself, and this is coming straight from the Emerson website, is made from an Aerospace titanium liner lock. And that's where a big part of the price probably comes into play, because titanium is not cheap. Very lightweight, and stronger than steel. If you look close here, you can see that it has a thumb stud, so you can slowly open it or quickly open it using that thumb stud there. Now, this model has the wave feature built into the back of the blade, right there, that nub. And if you don't know what the wave feature is, basically when this sits in your pocket, as you pull it out of your pocket, it'll snag the top of your jeans or your pants and automatically open, almost like an assisted open. But there's no spring or any kind of mechanism. It's just that metal nub right there that opens up. I'll do that again. So we'll pretend it's in your pocket. You're pulling it out of your pocket and it snags right there on your material of your pants. And as you pull it out, it automatically opens. Very ingenious design, and that's why people have been copying this design ever since it hit the market. The handles on this knife are G10, which is a epoxy and glass laminate. They're very grippy, if that's a word. Very durable, very light. I like that. Everybody loves a knife that is easy to hold, especially when your hands get wet or if they get bloody. You don't want this thing slipping. You want to have full control of it at all times. The handle length is 4.65 inches. And as you can see, when you grip this knife, you have a lot of control over this knife, because the handles are actually a little bit more than 50% bigger than the overall blade length itself. So you have a lot of real estate to grab onto. And that's very important when you're trying to control this thing under stress and adrenaline and fear. You want to have a lot of control over this blade in case of a self-defense situation. And if you look closely here, you can see the spacer. It's got a partial spacer. It goes halfway through the liners. And then over here, here's your pocket clip. It's got a steel spring style pocket clip. It does have 3 screws that secures this to the knife. Now, if you look on the other side, there's no holes here, so you can't reverse this. And there's no holes over here, so you can't reverse it to a tip down carry. It's only a tip up carry. And if you don't know what that means, this is tip up, because the tip is pointing up when it's in your pocket. Some knives allow you to switch it around so you can have it tip down in your pocket. It has a lanyard loop on the back, so you can thread 550 cord, parachute cord, or whatever onto it, so you can have additional retention under hard use, so it doesn't fly out of your hand in case you do drop it for whatever reason. You don't want to lose your $150 investment, that's for sure. If you look close here, these little ridges are called jimping, and it has a little bit of jimping on the actual liner itself, not very aggressive. And then on the back of the blade here, right by that wave feature, there is some larger jimping. It's not very aggressive at all. And then there's more smaller jimping on the liners again down here. So it does kind of give you that tactile, grippy support when you're trying to choke up on it to do some fine work or whatever, but it's not very aggressive at all really in the grand scheme of things. And last but not least, this knife is made in the USA, and if you're an American like me, that actually means something. You know, in a time where a lot of knives are made overseas to save money because labor is cheaper, you know, a knife that's made in Hong Kong or Taiwan or China or whatever, yeah, I mean, I get it. Companies need to save money so they can make a product that's less expensive for people to buy. I get that. But for those of us who don't mind spending a little bit extra money to have an American-made product that's high quality, that's heirloom quality that you can hand down to your kids, I don't mind spending a little bit extra money. I advocate supporting American companies and American workers whenever I can. And this is one of those products where you get what you pay for. As with everything in life, everything has a strength and a weakness, and this knife is no exception. Now keep in mind what I think is a pro and a con, or a strength and a weakness, may be totally opposite than what you think. So don't get offended if I have a different opinion. But some of the things I'd like to see different personally is I'd like to see a little bit more jimping, a little bit more aggressive jimping on the back and also on the front, just because I like to have a little bit more control when I'm doing more fine work with a knife. I'd also like to see the edge of the blade to be one solid design. Like if it's a plain edge, I'd like the entire length to be plain edge. And the reason why is because I personally think it's hard for me to sharpen these serrated edges if this was more of a survival slash defensive knife. Just easier to sharpen. Don't get me wrong, I like serrated edges, I love them, they come in very, very handy, but I just prefer a straight edge personally. And then also the pocket clip, I would really like to see this pocket clip all the way towards the rear or closer to the rear, so when it's sitting in my pocket it's more concealed. And at the $150 I'd like to see more options. I'd like to have the pocket clip be able to move over here if I get bored and I want to change it for whatever reason, or on the opposite side if I want to change pockets or change what side of the body I'm wearing this. But like I said, it's not a deal breaker. It's definitely just my own personal preference. On the upside, the strengths are undeniable. This knife is extremely high quality. It locks up nice and tight. It's made with incredible steel that holds a nice edge. The titanium liners are very high quality, lightweight and strong. G10 grips are incredible. I mean, this thing is undeniably a very high quality knife that will last a lifetime. So if you're interested in an Emerson, check it out. CQC 7.